Welcome you once again to my English class. Once again, our topic is memory. Memories are really very strange things. They often take you back and create a very strange feeling in your mind. Someone very beautifully said about memory. Let me quote, please pay attention. Someone rightly said, memories often behave in a strange way. They crowd around you when you are all alone and leave you alone when you are in the middle of a crowd. In the last videos, we discussed Khushwant Singh's narration of his beautiful, memorable childhood in the company of his grandmother. And once again, we are having a poem this time, which is a photograph by Charlie Tholson. In Khushwant Singh's case, it was a narration in prose. He narrated very beautifully about his memorable childhood spent in the company of his grandmother. And here we have a poem written by a British poet who was born in 1924 and died in 2018, only 3 years ago, at the age of 94. This Charlie Tholson was a poet, a teacher, a local politician, an editor, a versatile personality. And in this poem, she has, in a very beautiful and brief way, she has presented her memory. It was actually not her memory, it was her mother's memory and then her memory. Her mother had taken a group photograph when she was just 12, much before she was married. Then she got married, she had her children, and then she died. And her daughter, the poet, later on found this photograph. So a photograph often it carries memory. You people, you often click pictures, but when you see a picture that was taken some 10 years ago, when you were a small child, for example, your age was 4 or 5, your mother was feeding you, or you were playing with your friends and the picture was taken, you look at it. You are now 16 or 17 and you look at your picture that was taken 10 years ago. You get really alarmed, you enjoy it. But when you will grow old, your age will become 60, at that time again you will see this picture, then a lot of different other thoughts will come to your mind. It will create a wonderful situation in your mind. It will make you philosophic. You will then realize the value of time, the meaning of life. So photographs often carry memories. Photograph is something very common nowadays. Very easily, very frequently people click pictures. And this is the photograph that our poet is talking about, a photograph that carries the memory of her mother. And how in this beautiful poem you will find the poet has presented some very philosophic, some very wonderful facts of life. Let us see the poem then. A photograph by Charlie Tholson. The cardboard shows me how it was when the two girl cousins went paddling, each one holding one of my mother's hands, and she, the big girl, some 12 years or so, all three stood still to smile through their hair at the uncle with the camera. A sweet face, my mother's, that was before I was born. And the sea, which appears to have changed less, washed their terribly transient feet. Some 20, 30 years later, she would laugh at the snapshot. See Betty and Dolly, she would say, and look how they dressed us for the beach. The sea holiday was her past, mine is her laughter, both wry with the labored ease of loss. Now she has been dead nearly as many years as that girl lived, and of this circumstance there is nothing to say at all. Its silence silences. Poem is very beautiful. Let us start discussing it then. It is a photograph that the poet's mother was there in the photograph. The poet's mother, along with her two cousins, went to a sea beach for entertainment. And during that time, a photograph was taken that still is in the possession of the poet that shows the poet's mother along with the poet's mother's two cousins. The cardboard shows me how it was when the two girl cousins went paddling. The cardboard, what is cardboard? A cardboard is a frame, made of hard paper, etc. When a photograph is framed, it is framed in a cardboard. That is the cardboard. The cardboard shows me how it was. It means that the poet's mother also cherished the memory. She loved it, she valued it, and she had preserved the photograph at her home in a cardboard. And now, looking at the cardboard, the poet says, the cardboard shows me how it was when the two girl cousins went peddling. What is this peddle? Cardboard is one word that we got. I have told you the meaning. It is a frame made of thick paper. Now we have peddle. Peddle means to travel in water or to walk in water. To walk or to travel in water. You have gone to river or to any water body and you are just playing there, you are paddling. You are walking through water, you are paddling. When the two girl cousins went paddling, each one holding one of my mother's hands. Those two cousins of the poet's mother, they were holding each of the poet's mother's hands. The poet's mother was there, along with her was her two cousins, the poet's mother's cousins, and they were holding each of the poet's mother's hands. And she, the big girl, who is this big girl? The big girl is the poet's mother. She was the senior-most of the three. She, the big girl, some 12 years or so. The time when the photograph was taken, the poet's mother was a very young girl. Her age was just 12 years. This 12-year-old girl was the senior-most out of the three girls. And the two cousins of the poet's mother were holding each of the poet's mother's hands. All three stood still to smile through their hair at the uncle with the camera. The uncle also went with the uncle. This means it was the poet's, it is supposed to be the poet's mother's uncle, and he was taking the picture, and as someone clicks a picture, those whose picture he is taking, they should all look at the camera. Yes, these three girls were looking at the camera and they were smiling through their hair. What does this mean? Yes, when you click a picture, you try to smile so that your picture becomes beautiful. They were smiling through their hair. What does it mean? They were just enjoying. It was a fun time for them. So their hair were that untidy hair were lying here and there. So their hair was on their face. Their face was partially covered with their hair, and through this partially covered face with hair, they smiled and they looked at the camera that was in the hand of the uncle who was taking the picture. A sweet face, my mother's. That was before I was born. Yes, the poet was not born because her mother was only 12 years old at that time. When the poet now herself is grown up and she is looking not only at her picture, but her mother's picture, who is no more. Her mother was just a 12-year-old girl. At that time, there was no question of the poet's birth. So she says, a sweet face, my mother's. That was before I was born. Looking at this picture of her mother's childhood days, the poet is really overwhelmed. She is fascinated. And the sea, which appears to have changed less, washed their terribly transient feet. In this first stanza, this poem has 3 stanzas. The first stanza is the bigger one. In this stanza, we have got a description of the photograph and where it was taken, how it was taken. But at the end, the 2 lines are philosophic. See, the poet is conveying here one very brilliant fact of life, one universal truth she is sharing with us. What is it? And the sea, which appears to have changed less, washed their terribly transient feet. The picture also shows, firstly, the upper part of the picture shows that the 3 girls were smiling through their hair at the camera, and on both sides of the poet's mother there were the 2 cousins. The poet's mother was the senior most of them, and the picture also shows this sea water. The poet said, sea which appears to have changed less. That is a fact. Human beings, in many other poems and writings you will get it, that human life is transient, human life is temporary, but other natural things, they are permanent, they are eternal. Sea is there, river is there, they are just there, they have been there. So sea which appears to have changed less. So far as the poet's mother is concerned, her age was 12 then she grew up, then she got married, then she gave birth to the daughter, then she died. That is what has happened to her over these years, and the picture is now in the hand of her daughter. And so far as the sea where they took the picture, that is concerned, the sea appears to have changed less. Sea is the same sea, and what did the sea water do? It washed their terribly transient feet. Transient. Transient means temporary. The feet of the three girls were temporary. What does this mean? By this feet, the poet means they were temporary. Their life were temporary. By this she means human life is temporary. We all are temporary here. So there is a great comparison here made between human life and other natural things. That sea, which is a part of nature, that is the same. But so far as my mother is concerned, her age was 12, a lot of changes have occurred to her, and so much change has occurred that she even has left this world. Such changes have occurred to her. And at that time also in the picture it shows that the sea water is washing their feet. It is washing their feet, and while referring to the word feet, the poet is using two words, terribly transient feet. Transient is temporary because human beings will grow old, they will die, their feet will also, it will be mixed with soil. Terribly transient means really transient, it is very much temporary. By this the poet emphasizes on the temporariness of human life. Human life is so temporary. This is also shown in the picture. Two things are there. One is the feet of the three girls and also the sea water washing it. So far as the sea is concerned, it is unchanged, very less changes has occurred. So far as the girls were concerned, a huge change have occurred to them. And the poet is focusing on her mother's life, her change. So much change has occurred that she is even no more in this world. This is the first stanza. Coming to the second stanza, the poet is telling about a second phase. The first phase was the poet's mother's childhood. When she was just 12 years old, she went for entertainment on a sea beach along with her cousins. A picture was taken. That was one phase of phase. Coming to the second phase, you see, the poet is thinking that her mother must have done it, that after 20 or 30 years, what happened, she would means her mother, she would laugh at the snapshot. Yes, when you look at a picture that was taken when you are very young, and when you grow up after some 20 or 30 years, if you look at the same picture, you will smile, you will wonder looking at how I was. Yes, the poet is imagining that her mother must have, after 20 or 30 years of that incident, after 20 or 30 years of taking that picture, she must have again looked at the picture and she would laugh at the snapshot. Snapshot again means picture, photograph. Looking at her own picture when she was just 12 years old, and the poet's mother when she became 20 or 30 years later, she must have smiled looking at the picture, looking at how she was, and she would tell her same cousins again, see Betty and Dolly. Now we have got the names of the two cousins. After 20 or 30 years, the poet's mother would tell her cousins, see Betty and Dolly, you remember those pictures that we went to the sea beach, we enjoyed it, see the picture, and look how they dressed us for the beach. Our elders, how they dressed us, how they made us ready for the beach. See what we look here. That picture taken some 20 or 30 years ago. That is how she would react looking at the same picture some 20 or 30 years later. That is what the poet is imagining. Now the poet again in this stanza also telling something serious. In the first stanza also we found the earlier part is something very happy. Towards the end, the last two lines are grave, serious, philosophic. The same is the case in the second stanza. Coming to the last part, you see, the poet is sharing one very philosophic thought. What is it? The sea holiday was her past. When the poet's mother, after 20 or 30 years, would look at the snapshot and she would smile looking at their own picture, and she would tell her cousins, see Betty and Dolly how we looked, how they dressed us for the beach. And the poet is saying that the sea holiday was her past. At that time when the poet's mother looked at the picture, sea holiday where she enjoyed in the company of her cousins, that is something past. That is a memory of the past life. Some 20 or 30 years old memory. And so far as the poet is concerned, she said that what is my past? My mother's past was that visit to the beach, that entertainment, that happiness, that fun they made in the beach. That was her past. When she looked at the picture some 20 or 30 years later, that old age, 12 years age will not come back. that kind of fun, that kind of happiness she will never enjoy. So when she looked at the picture some 20 or 30 years later, her happiness that the picture shows, that has become something of her past. And so far as the poet is concerned, she said, my past is my mother's laughter, mine is her laughter. My mother is no more. Her laughter is something past to me. And for my mother, when she looked at the picture some 20 or 30 years later, her past was her visit to the beach. My past is my mother's laughter. Both wry with the labored ease of loss. Wry, W-R-Y, wry means mock. Wry means mock. Wry means mock, ridicule. My mother's past and my past. Past of both of us, they laugh at us, they ridicule us, they tell us, yes, you people, human beings, your life is so temporary. Both wry with the labored ease of loss. This phrase is very important. Labored ease of loss. What is this labored ease of loss? Labored ease of loss. Loss, you know, ease is a noun. Ease is a noun, its adjective is easy. Ease of loss. When you lose something, at the loss of something, can you feel ease? Can you feel comfortable? No. Ease of loss, there is nothing called ease of loss. When you lose something, at the loss of something, you feel difficulty, you feel pain. But the poet is saying ease of loss. What does this mean? Ease of loss means that when you lose a thing and you are not able to get it back, you have no choice. You have just to accept it. Then what do? You try to console yourself with the situation. For example, someone has lost someone at his home, someone has died, and this life cannot be taken back. So what will you do? Everybody will tell, everybody will console you. You will also console yourself. No problem. What should I do? I have to do nothing. It is God's choice. So when you lose a thing, at the loss of something that you cannot get back, you just console yourself. That is the ease of loss. Somehow you try to bring ease to your mind. There is pain, there is difficulty, you cannot tolerate it, you cannot cope with it, but still you try to console yourself. That is called ease of loss. How come? How do we acquire this ease of loss? Firstly, I said ease and loss cannot go together. When there is loss, there cannot be ease. But the ease of loss we sometimes acquire forcefully. How do we do it? When there is no choice to get the thing back. And in getting this ease of loss, we have to labor, we have to work, we have to mentally console ourselves. We have to bring a lot of justification. It is not an easy job. You have to do a labor, you have to work hard mentally to console yourself that don't bother, don't ponder over this thing, you will feel bad. So it is labored ease of loss. By labor, through your efforts, you try to bring some ease to your mind, which is already suffering, which is suffering at the loss of something. So far as the poet is concerned, her loss is her mother's smile. Her mother's loss was her childhood days. That is something universal. You cannot stop childhood. A child will grow. The funny time, the happy time of childhood will definitely end at one time. You cannot stop it. And the poet's mother, she also died. Death is something obvious, something definite. You cannot stop it. So in both the cases, they are suffering. Earlier, the poet's mother suffered the pain of her loss of childhood, loss of those funny moments in the beach when she looked at the picture some 20 or 30 years later. And now for the poet, her mother's smile is lost, her laughter is lost, and they cannot get it back. So they are trying to. Now the poet's mother also did it earlier, and now the poet is doing it. She is working, she is making efforts to console herself. So with labored ease of loss, somehow she is consoling herself that I have to live life like this without my mother's laughter, without my mother's smiling face. I have to live my life. And these past memories, they are lying, they are ridiculing, they are making fun at human beings. In the present case, they are making fun, they are ridiculing the poet, but universally, in general, they are ridiculing at all of us, that you human beings, your life is so temporary, you get changed, we remain the same. Coming to the last stanza, you see, Now she has been dead nearly as many years as that girl lived. Now she has been dead, she, the poet's mother. That girl again is the poet's mother. So the poet's mother was once a girl, and she has lived her life, and after her death, how many years have passed? After her death, the number of years that have passed after the poet's mother's death is the same as the number of years that she lived. If the poet's mother died at the age of 30, she lived for 30 years, then according to the poet, another 30 years have passed. This is what the poet is meaning, that the number of years that have passed since the poet's mother's death is the same that the number of years that her mother lived. Now she has been dead nearly as many years as that girl lived, and of this circumstance there is nothing to say at all. Yes, nothing to say. That is something natural course. My mother was once a very young girl, 12 years of age, and then she enjoyed her childhood with her cousins in the beach. She got a picture, she got a photograph. Later on, when she would look at the picture after 20 or 30 years, she herself would smile at it. She would wonder looking at her own picture, and she would miss and she would feel pain at the loss of her childhood days. And then she died. After her death, the number of years that she lived, equal number of years have passed since then. And for the poet again, there is another story of sadness. She is no more able to get her mother's smiling face. But in these cases, you cannot help. You can neither help the poet's mother to come back to life again, to be alive again, neither can you help the poet to get her mother back. This is something beyond human capacity, human ability. So the poet said, of this circumstance there is nothing to say at all. We are helpless, we cannot do anything. Its silence silences. The photograph is silent, but it tells a lot of stories. My mother is no more. When I think about it, there is complete silence. Though this silence silences. The last line is very beautiful because it has some 3 words, and the same word silence is used in 2 different ways. Its silence silences. Its silence, first silence is noun. Its silence silences. Next silence is verb. Silences, s is used at the end of the verb because the subject is third person singular number. Its silence, that is the subject, is third person singular number. So the verb takes s after it. Its silence silences. So this poem tells us many things. Firstly, the fact that human life is temporary, that human growth is common. From childhood you grow to adulthood, you then become old, you die, and this death and this growing is something that no one can stop, and you have to live life with these things. And again, that there are some things, a small thing it may be, a picture it may be, it carries memories, it tells you stories, it reminds you of many things in your past. But the memory only is there. The people, the time that is gone forever. You cannot get it back, and you have to live life in this way. And you cannot help yourself, no one can help you. There is complete silence and no one can help. So let us cherish our own memories, let us create memories with our friends, that even a time will come when people will be proud of our own company with others, people will be proud of our behavior, our time we spent with them, that even though they cannot take us back to life, but they will definitely enjoy the past. They will definitely be proud of the wonderful, the memorable time they spent with us. This is how we can make our memory beautiful. That is how we can make our time beautiful. This is how we can make our life beautiful. With this expectation, we are ending this video. Thank you very much for being with me.